When I was 4 years old, I really wanted a pair of shiny pink shoes. I saw them there glistening back at me, the bulbs of the fluorescent lights in the store bouncing off of them like pearls. It was love at first sight. I had to have these pink shoes. I tugged my mom's pant leg, begging her desperately to let me get them. My mom enthusiastically agreed that if these were the shoes I really wanted, she'd happily get them for me. There were no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I left the store that day proudly displaying my pink, shiny new kicks. Everywhere I went, I would ask people, "Do you like my new shoes?" I'd proudly lift a foot up in the air to show them off, and for the most part, these total strangers reacted charitably to my overly enthusiastic displays. And others, not so much. Some would comment, "You know, those are girls' shoes." Others would ask my mom if she was really going to let me wear those. This was all the more palpable in the following week, when I took my shiny shoes out for their preschool debut. One of my young classmates came up to me while my mom dropped me off that day. He ran up to me and stopped for a moment, looking down at my feet, and remarked, "Those shoes are pink. Those shoes are for girls." Instinctually, I reacted by saying, "Nuh-uh, they're boys' shoes. They're my shoes." My mom then joined me and some friends in a game of tag. He didn't seem to think twice about it. As far as he knew, I was right. There was nothing to support this arbitrary divide in clothes for separate genders. It was as simple as acknowledging it and moving on to play tag together after. Though I don't identify as transgender, I encountered many assumptions and questions from others around my gender identity and expression. Looking back, it gives me a big point of gratitude that I had loving parents who let me wear whatever I wanted to. I was allowed to be me, to wear what I was comfortable with, and to bring my fullest self. This past UN Sunday, we explored the theme of gender equity and why it matters to our work as Unitarian Universalists. Now, first, let's unpack gender. I use gender to refer to a complex collection of roles, identities, expressions, and performances. All of these hold a particular meaning to each person, society, or culture. Gender is different from one's biological sex. It incorporates broader categories from the simple binary of male and female. A person's gender expression is how someone expresses their gender outwardly. In the case of 4-year-old Alex, I was expressing my own gender that didn't conform to either male or female. A person's gender expression is also different from one's gender identity. This is what a person understands internally to be their gender. This may not fully align with what a person expresses. This is because gender identity isn't visible, unlike gender expression. Now that we have a working understanding of gender, we should now unpack the differences between equality and equity. You might think of mortgages and properties when you hear the word equity. Today, we're talking about something different. In a sentence, equity is about fairness. It's about ensuring that everyone is offered the same opportunities, and this is very distinct from equality. If you notice the image, there's a picture that illustrates this difference. In each photo, there are 3 people watching a baseball game. One of these photos, labeled Equality, shows each person standing on one box. However, there's a challenge here. Not everyone can see over the fence to see the game. Some just aren't tall enough. The ground they're standing on is lower than others. The fence is just a bit too high. But each person was given a box to stand on, right? Isn't that fair? I mean, that sounds pretty equal to me. If you look at the next photo labeled Equity, you'll notice something different. Each person is able to view the baseball game over the fence. Because each person has a difference in viewing needs, they each have a different number of boxes to stand on. The one on the lowest bit of ground receives 3 boxes in order to see over the fence. The one on the highest ground needs only 1 box for a good view. The best way to understand the difference is by what each of these asks for. Equality asks for equal treatment. Equity asks for equal outcome. When thinking about how gender operates with equity, we don't have to look far to see this in our own Unitarian Universalist tradition. In some ways, we can be proud of how we've lived up to gender equity in our congregations. Once an exclusively all-male ministry in early Unitarianism and Universalism, our current Unitarian Universalist tradition now has a predominantly female ministry. The Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, the current president of the UUA, is the first elected woman to serve as president. Even at First Parish in Wayland, where I'm preaching this from, we have much to be proud of. We are a welcoming congregation, meaning that we have taken steps to be welcoming to LGBTQ+ folks. We have begun to include a space for gender pronouns on our name tags, making it a safer space for people to share their pronouns and feel welcomed by having us honor the name and pronouns that they use. However, when we look at other aspects of our association, we see a deep need for growth. A report released last year by the UU organization Trust, Transgender Religious Professional UUs Together. The report found that 72% of trans UUs didn't feel their congregation fully included them in their transgender or trans identities. In addition, only 44% of trans UUs felt spiritually connected to and nourished by their congregation. Because of this marginalization of not feeling fully welcomed or included, some trans UUs have had to leave our congregations. In other words, they haven't felt the radical sense of welcome we hold and value so proudly as Unitarian Universalists. Our own aching world has a need for some extra growth around gender equity. Around the world, men remain a majority in political and religious leadership. Even at the United Nations, the staff breakdown between men and women comes to 39% female and 61% male, showing a disparity in equitable leadership. The reading from the preamble to the United Nations Charter, printed as number 475 in the back of your gray hymnal, shares some common values between our Unitarian Universalist principles and the values in this charter. A couple of these commitments have to do with gender equity. First and foremost, the commitment to reaffirm the faith and fundamental human rights in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women and of nations large and small. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant to affirm our first principle, that all people have inherent worth and dignity. This isn't a matter that's up for debate with us. It's a statement of faith. It's a statement of conscience, and it is our religious witness as Unitarian Universalists. As UUs, we believe that each person's life matters, regardless of their gender as male or female, as transgender or cisgender, as genderqueer or non-binary. The similarity in values doesn't stop there. An additional call from this charter to practice tolerance and live together in peace with one another as good neighbors sounds a lot like our sixth principle, calling for a world at peace with justice and liberty for all people. While I like the aims of the charter, calling us toward living together as peaceful neighbors, I'm going to push us further than tolerance. Tolerance will only get us so far. Tolerance is just the starting point. Instead, we need a radical acceptance and welcome of one another amongst neighbors and friends, amongst parishioners in our congregations, and amongst our wider communities. Our Universalist forebears held a belief in an all-encompassing radical love surrounding every single one of us. They believed in a God whose name was love. Nobody, they believed, was beyond the bounds of this love. All people, no matter who they were or what they'd done, would be saved. Friends, we have a life-saving message that needs to be heard, especially by those who are told that their inherent worth and dignity are up for debate day to day. As a gay, gender nonconforming child, I was lucky to hear this message, that I was loved for who I was. This message saved me, welcoming me into life celebration in UU community as a teenager. It breaks my heart that trans and other marginalized UUs haven't felt a warm welcome in our communities. This must be changed. We must be better. The good news is that we're working to be and better welcome people of marginalized identity. Let's try that one again. The good news is that we're working to better welcome people of marginalized identities. Currently, congregations are renewing their commitments to LGBTQ+ inclusion through the UUA's Welcoming Congregation Renewal process. More and more of us are including our gender pronouns in the space on our name tags to better include each other and call people by their pronouns. By including pronouns on our name tags, we're signaling that we are safe communities for trans and non-binary people. We're saying, we love you. We respect you. You are safe and welcome here. I want to highlight, too, that many of us know someone who is trans or gender nonconforming already. Perhaps a child, a sibling, a cousin or a friend, a coworker, a grandparent, a partner, perhaps even ourselves. Many of you are already living out radical welcome by loving and accepting people as they are, by using their chosen name and pronouns, by loving them so much that they roll their eyes at all of the love. This is also radically living out our faith. Friends, we have a message that's too precious to be locked up in our own fear, ignorance, and empty words of welcome. We must live out our charge as Unitarian Universalists to be the church, to welcome those at the margins, to love the hell out of this world and one another. We are called by our values to build spaces of radical inclusion and welcome, and we are called by faith to be the beloved community for one another. Equity powerfully reminds us that there's a difference in treating everyone the same and ensuring that everyone has the same welcome. Like in the image, some of us may need some extra boxes, a bit of extra welcome and inclusion, in order to fully see over the fence, in order to feel fully welcomed. My charge to you is this: may we be the faith of welcome that we dream of. May we strive to take equity seriously so that we further include those at the margins. May we remember that our sacred work of welcome and inclusion doesn't end in empty promises or affirmations. It truly begins by showing one another radical love and acceptance. It begins by loving the hell out of this world and loving the hell out of one another. May you go forth from this place ready to do this difficult and sacred work. May it be so. Amen.